So this is the last shiur we have before the Yomim Tovim. So it is only natural that we will speak about Teshuvah. I think we spoke about Teshuvah last week, but today we're just going to learn one line in the Rambam. What does the Rambam mean? So, first of all, a good gebencht Jahr for everyone. I hope to see you Sukkot like every year by Simchas Beis HaShoeva. But today is a bit of a preparation for Aseres Yemei Teshuvah. So, already last week, we learned the posuk in this week's parsha, V'shavto ad Hashem Elokecho, and the Ramban, that this posuk is the mitzvah of Teshuvah. Kosev HaRambam, Perik Beis Mehilchas Teshuvah. Mahi HaTeshuvah, Sheyazoi v'choyte chetoi, v'yasiroi memachshavtoi, v'yigmor belibo shelo yaseu oid, which means regretting the past and Kabbalah ala osed. Shenemar yazav rosh darka v'ish aven machshavoisav v'chein yisnacham al she'ovar shenemar ki achrei shuvi nechamti. And now, what's pshat in these words? V'yoed olav yordea talumois shelo yoshev lezeh hachet le'olam. Shenemar, that's in Shuvi Yisor ad Hashem Elokecho, v'loi noimer oid Elokeinu l'masi yodeinu. Yoed olav yodea talumai shelo yoshev lezeh hachet le'olam. Does that mean if HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows that he'll do this Aveda again and he'll just slip back to where he was, then his Teshuvah is meaningless? Mi yamoid b'chol eile. I mean, we're human, and I hope that each and every one of us, Aseres Yemei Teshuvah Yom Kippur, really wants to be better. But usually, by Chol HaMoed Sukkos, we're more or less back to where we were. Maybe he'll take, if you're a big tzaddik, he'll take you another month or two. So that means your Teshuvah means nothing. This is very depressing. So this will turn people away from doing Teshuvah. So today, we're going to have 4 pshotim. This Vasemis, and this is very typical of Gedolei HaChasidus, who generally showed Am Yisrael ponim soichkois, not ponim oitzvois. Gedolei HaChasidus were always very optimistic and encouraging and forthcoming, speaking in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And usually Gedolei HaMusar were not angry, but somewhat harsher in their approach to Teshuvah and to Tikkun Avoin. So we start off with this Vasemis, Tov Reish Mem. B'medrash Psikta, Shuvi Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecho. The Psikta says, Eid Hashem Elokecho. So I skipped 4 and I'm going over to 5. B'medrash Psikta, ad Hashem Elokecho, Hashem Yisborach Hu Eid B'Dover. And that is where the Rambam takes Ad Shiyoed Olav Yordea Talumois. Ad Hashem Elokecho, the Psikta is mefarish, not Ad with the Pasach, but Eid with the Tzerei. Kodesh Baruch Hu should testify. And that is the Rambam, Yoed Olav Yordea Talumois. Shu mefarish Ad Loshen Eidus. Bir Adover. Shavada yesh hirurei tshuva b'chol ish Yisrael v'Shem Yisborach borchin kaloyes v'leiv. Ve'isa, and Chazal say, ad shelo inoitza machshava b'leiv, Shem Yisborach makabo. Don't know where this is written. V'zeh ne'ema gam kan al machshava toivo. אף על פי שאין עוד מיוחד להטוס את עצמו לגמרי לתשובה. אף על פי כן מועיל היגיע להטויס הלב במה שהעניקה לאדם עצמו. והשם יזבורך עד על תשובה זו. וזה גם כן לא שנרמב"ם שיוד עולב ידע תלומס, פרש ידע תלומס, אף מה שנעלם מעיני אדם עצמו. And this is taking midas arachamim to its very extreme. So this Vasema says, we're Jewish. We all have a Yetzer Tov. Rabbeinu Shalom, Ritzonenu lasis ritzonchu mi ma'akev, sa'or shebe'isa v'shibed malchiyos. And when the Heilige Tay come along, everybody, some pintala, some point in his heart wants to do good. And sometimes even the person himself isn't aware how good he is, how beautiful he is. And sometimes the person himself isn't aware of the beginning of Teshuvah, awakening in his heart. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a boichin kalayas v'leiv. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu testifies what even the person himself isn't aware. And that is, Yodol v'yedei talumois, that somewhere deep in his heart, he wants to be good and he wishes never to do this Aveda again. So what seems to be such harsh language in the Rambam, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs to testify that I'll never do this Aveda again, this Vasema says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could look into the heart of a person and see what even the person isn't aware of. So sometimes in medicine, in surgery, we do an operation, and there are little cells that aren't visible to the naked eye. You need a microscope to see them. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses his cosmic microscope to look for hirhurei tshuva that are just starting to develop and starting to blossom. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is an aid on those hirhurei tshuva, and that is tshuva, according to the Rambam. So this seems to be far-fetched, this Pshat in the Rambam, but it's very typical of the Svasemis and Geloi LaChasidus. Source number 4 is another Pshat in the Rambam. Ad shiod olav yadei teluma shel yoshev lechadav hazeh. Ma'atei maloi mishe'ena nikra tshuva ad shiod olav di'im ken lo shofkas chayei. No one reaches this madrega. 1 in a million. You need to be either the Vilna Gaon or the Baal Shem Tov to say, Kadosh Baruch Hu knows that never again will we do this Aveira. Lo shofkas chayei lekol beria. Achen ha'mechuven hu, ki hatshuva tzorech liyos ad madrega zu. V'hainu, ביטל הבחירה לגמרי. כי בוודאי צדיקים זוכים בבידוסם עד שניקח מהם כמעט כל הבחירה. כיוון שבוחרים בזה, ובדרך שאודם רוצה ללך, מוליך לנויסוי. וזה באמס יהיה סוף התיקון, כאשר ישיבו כל בני ישראל בימס. וזה כוונס הרמב"ם, כי התשובה אין לה שיר והפסק, עד שיודור בידי התלומס. So the Susamis Pshat is ad. What does ad mean? That is soif tshuva. That is the ultimate goal. And a person needs to do tshuva until he will have siyata d'shmaya and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take his bechira away. There's a wonderful shmuz from Rav Dessler and Michtev Me'Eliyahu. And he talks about Sulam HaBechira, the ladder of Bechira. And some people start from the bottom of the ladder, 0 on the Richter scale. They were not born in frum homes, and their Bechira starts by Chilul Shabbos, by Avodah Zorah, by Gilei Arayis, and if they move up 2 or 3 notches, then that's great. Some people are born number 5 or 6 or 7 on the Richter scale. You were born in a frum family. It never occurred to you to be Mechalel Shabbos. It never occurred to you to do a terrible Aveda. You were born into Yiddishkeit. And you need to fight with Shmiras Einayim. You need to fight with V'hogisa B'yom V'layla. You struggle with Kavona Satfila. So you start off 6 on the Richter scale. And if you go up one notch from 6 to 7, the one that started on 0 and he's up to 3 or 4 is a bigger tzaddik than you are. He's more of a Baal Teshuvah than you are. You're frummer than he is, but everybody has his own scale and his own ladder. And that's Rav Dessler explaining. The ultimate number 10 on the Richter scale is Bitul HaBechira. So most of us don't have Bechira in Lo Tirtzach. None of us ever was tempted and needed to fight it with his Yetzer Hara not to murder the other boy in yeshiva that insulted him or hurt his feelings. So each and every one of us, there are some Avedas that are beyond our Bechira. We don't struggle. We don't have that temptation at all. So the ultimate Madrege is Bitul HaBechira. And Rav Dessler quotes the Gra. If anybody will find the Gra, Movilna Monei Basrei Lebei Mesusa, because for years I'm looking for this Gra and I didn't find it, but Rav Dessler quotes the Gra. Tnu oiz le'elokim. Give strength to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How could a mortal give strength to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How could we give oiz le'elokim? So the Gaon says, there is one area which Kiviyachal, Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't control, Kiviyachal, and that is Bchiras HaOdam. Everything else is controlled by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There is one area that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I don't want to control this. This is up to you, and that's the Bechira. Uvecharto b'chayim. So when a person is mevatel his Bechira, and he gives back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu what was out of his control, that is no oyes le'elokim. That's what Rav Dessler quotes from the Gaon. Please, if anybody finds the Gaon, just let me know, and I'll be very grateful, because I'm looking for this Gaon 100 years and I didn't find it. So the Sfas Emes says, Ad Shiur Adol V'Yedei Telimas is the ultimate goal. Ad Sham. Maybe someday we will arrive. Ad Shiur Adol V'Yedei Telimas Shelo Yoshev L'Zechet L'Yolim. He will no longer have Bechira. The problem I have with the Sfas Emes is the Lashon of the Rambam is not Ad Shiur Adol V'Yedei Telimas, but rather V'Yoed Olav Yedei Telimas, and this entire pshat in the Sfas Emes is based on the Lashon Ad Shiur Adol V'Yedei Telimas. So if anybody finds a Gerson Rambam Ad Shiur Adol, I'll thank him twice, once again. First, we need to check in Shabsa Frankel. I didn't check. Maybe there's a Gersa Ad Shiur Adol V'Yedei Telimas, but in our Rambam it's not Ad. So these are two wonderful pshotim of the Sfas Emes, just to make life easier and just to make it more appealing and encouraging. Try to do tshuva. You're not lost. You have a good chance to do tshuva. Because, according to what many others give pshat, we have no chance. So why bother if you'll never get there? So this week's parsha, Ki ha-mitzvah zois asher noichem et tzavcha hayoim, lo b'shamayim v'lo me'ever hayam. So, according to the Rambam, b'shamayim he, it definitely is b'shamayim. V'yod olav yedei telumas shelo yoshev lechet lezechet liyolam. And the pasuk says, lo b'shamayim he, v'lo me'ever hayam, lo lechoyko he. So these are two pshotim of the Sfas Emes. Reb Itzele Peterburger, who knows who was Reb Itzele? Do you know anything about him? Whose Talmud was he? He was probably the greatest Talmud of Reb Sol Salanter, the founder of the Musa movement. Reb Itzele was an amazing Gaon. So let me tell you a story about Reb Itzele. His name was Reb Itzele Blazer. He was Rav in Peterburg. So he's known in the Torah world as Reb Itzele Peterburger. He didn't have any children, and therefore he printed a magnificent sefer in Lamdis, Teshuvah, Pri Yitzchak. And in his introduction he writes, why did he call the sefer Pri Yitzchak? Because these are his peiros. It wasn't zeicher to children, so what he will leave to the world is the sefer. So people will learn in a sefer for eternity. After the sefer came out, his wife, the tzaddikus, demanded a get, because she knew that she is the one that can't have children. And she said she can't live with the knowledge that the Gadol Hador won't have children because of her, and she demanded a get, and he refused, because they have a loving life, and she was an Eishes Chayil, and he had a Koros Toiv. So this is a very strange Shalom Bayis issue. I dealt with 1 million Shalom Bayis issues. I never had one like this. She demanded a get because she wanted him to have children, and he refused. And she was so adamant that he broke down, and he asked her, what could I do for you to make you happy? So she said she wants to move to Eretz Yisrael. He should buy her a house in Eretz Yisrael and give her a bracha. He bought her a house in Eretz Yisrael. He gave her a bracha for Arichas Yomim. She lived up to 100 years, and she moved to Eretz Yisrael. Ultimately, he remarried, and he had children. And his son was born Le'ezu Knusoi. His grandson, Pilei Plois, third generation, his his grandson, Daven the Shiur. And Abitzela passed away, I think it was somewhere in the Ayins, I think it was, about 60 or 70 years ago. And his grandson, Daven the Shiur, he passed away about 10 years ago. And so he had children like Isaac Knosoi. But he didn't retract his Sefer. And we were zeicher to the Sefer Pri Yitzchak. So Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer was a Talmud of Rabbi Saul Salanter, in my opinion, the greatest Talmud of Rabbi Saul Salanter. And he also deals with the Rambam at Shiur of Yedei Telumais. It is not exactly clear to me what his interpretation is, but he seems to have interpreted the Rambam bepashtus. So I suggest learn the Koich Ve'or. The Beis Halevi. Beis Halevi, as you know, wasn't from the Hasidic world, one of the greatest literature gedolim, and he is quite harsh. And he says, so he says, most of the time, Teshuvah is superficial. When it comes Yom Kippur, by night, Bakol Nidra, says Teshuvah, and everybody cries out, he does Teshuvah. But the ultimate test is what will happen 2, 3, 4, 5 months down the line. And if you fall back to the same state you were before, that proves that your Teshuvah wasn't really sincere, that it was superficial. In a way, it was Menasofa Velachutz. So according to the Beis Halevi, yes, if you're going to fall back to where you were, that is a huge question mark on your Teshuvah, and that would prove that your Teshuvah wasn't really sincere. So that's a big chumrah, and it's not very encouraging. Now we go to the Rishonim and to the classical commentators of the Rambam. And as always, they're in the middle. And usually Torah Semis is the middle road. Not as harsh as the Beis Halevi, but it wouldn't occur to them to suggest the pshotim of the Sfas Emes. So let's have a look. First of all, Lechem Mishnah. Lechem Mishnah is one of the choshevste meforshim of the Rambam. It's on the blad. Mai tshuva she'azav achoyta v'yodol v'yedei telumos v'yim toimar. Eich HaKodesh Baruch Hu yodol av kach v'chiloi nisharu ha'bechira b'yodoi v'arei amru hen b'kadoshav lo yamin. What? Person needs to come to bittul ha'bechira? How could a Kodesh Baruch Hu testify that he'll never transgress again? Hen b'kadoshav lo yamin. That means even the angels can't stand midas adin. V'yesh loim et pirusho kach. שבשור שאויס תשובה צורך שיקבל עליו לעיד לשם יזבח שלא יושב לזכת לעולם והוא על דרך ואוידו ליעש שמיים ועש האורץ שמקבל עליו לעידם שמיים ואורץ. So this is a new interpretation. ויודו לבידי תלים, it says not pshat that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will testify that he will never transgress. V'yod olav means he appoints HaKadosh Baruch Hu as an aid. Whenever I am a Sadik Kedushin before the Chuppah, first of all, I question the Eidim. Are you related to the Chosn or the Kala? Are your wives related to the chosn and the kala? Are you or your spouses related to each other? Because more than once, chosn and kala came to me a day or two after the kiddushin, and it became obvious that the Eidim were either relatives or their wives were relatives, and we needed to do a new kiddushin. And then I tell the chosn, you'll be memane the Eidim and say to them, Atem Eidai ve'eli Eidim achirim. So there's a concept of Atem Eidai. A person appoints his Eidim. Yoadolav doesn't mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be my Yodolav shelo yoshev lezeachet. Yoadolav means right here and now he needs to be sincere. And he needs to talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, Rabbeinu Shalom, you are my aid. I promise I will never do this again. Yoadolav, I hope you get what I'm explaining. It's not that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will testify. No, of course he might fall back. Right here and now, when he does Teshuvah and he says vidui, he needs to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, Atu Eidi, you are my aid. Be made that I promise never to do this again. Sefer Hasidim. Who was the Sefer Hasidim? Was he a Chosid or a Litvak? Who's the Sefer Hasidim? Who knows? Who was the Sefer Hasidim? Sefer Hasidim goes back almost 1,000 years, and that is Rabbi Yehuda Chosid, one of the early Hasidei Ashkenaz. He wasn't aware of the Baal Shem Tov, even though his Sefer is Sefer Hasidim. Sefer Hasidim, V'yoimar ani mayed ulei hayodea kol talumas shelo yoshev lezeachet liyolam. And that is exactly what the Lechem Mishnah says. When you say vidui, this is what you should say. Ani mayed ulai hayodea kol talumas. And obviously, this proves that the Lechem Mishnah the Rambam is correct. V'yod olav yodea talumas. He turns to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he says, Ani mayed ulei had yodea talumas. Rabbeinu Sadia Gaon is the most encouraging of them all. Sefer Amunas V'Deis. V'avayir oid, ki ha'odam kashe yaskem be'is tshuvose belev sholem shelo yishneh. Tiyeh tshuvose mekobeles. Ve'im tisi'eu ata va'acha kach lishnois, ein tshuvose nefsedes. Ach yimchelu lo ha'avoyne shayo koidem ha'tshuvah, v'yakosav olav ma sheyeh la'achareyo. V'chein em yeneg ha'mineg hazeh pa'omim rabois. שישוב ואחר כך ישנה לחטוא. אין כויסבן עולב כי ימה שאחר. מה שאחר התשובה. כשתהיה בכל פעם דעתו שלהם מבלי ביטוב שלא ישנה. So, Rabbeinu Sadia Gaon says, even if this will happen many times, not once and not twice, but many times, he sincerely does tshuva, and then he falls back. And he's the same as he was before. But the tshuva still is tshuva shalema. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu moichel v'soleach. And even if that will happen, not once and not twice, but many times. And that is usually where we stand. That is the Rabbeinu Sadia Gaon. Chibur tshuva lemeiri. The same. Misvada bepiv. V'liboy loshev lechatov. That tshuva means nothing. If a person says vidui, but in his heart he doesn't really have charota, doesn't really have Kabbalah, that tshuva is void. It means nothing. Toivel v'sheretz biyadoi. But then, second line, ve'ein mezehamin, mishe be'eis hatshuva goyme beliboy lazav darkoi harot tachlas aziva. Aval achar zayachricheu yitzroi loshev lechto. That is different, and that is tshuva shalema. Beis Elokim lemabit. Anybody know who the mabit was? More people know his son than him. The mabit was the father of Maharit. The mabit is Rabbeinu Moshe Mitarani. Tarani is a city in Italy. His son was Rabbi Yom Tov Miterani, and that is Mabit and Marit. Teshuvah Mabit is his monumental work. Kirya Sefer on the Rambam, number 2, but he has a Sefer Beis Elokim and Musa. And a Beis Elokim, the Mabit writes, ואומר כנראה מדברי רבינו, כיוון שחוזר אודם בתשובה מנחתו המשוסה וגומר בליבי שלא ינסוי סמויד השם יסבורך מה וחתוסה בתשובה זויס, ואם אחר כך חוזר לחתו, יצר ראש ופתאו ישים החודש, לחזור למה שחטא, ולא יהיו החתום הראשונים חוזרים ונאורים, אחרי שנתבטלו בתשובה הקודמת. So all these גדולי עולם, the Lechem Mishnah, before him the Mabit, before him the Meiri, before him Sefer Hasidim, and the earliest, Emunis V'Deis. Their pshat at Shiur Dolev Yedei Telumois is, right here and now, you need to be sincere. And you say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ta'id Olai. That is somewhat left of the Svasemis and somewhat right of the Beis HaLevi. And that is the real pshat in Rambam. The last source on our sheet, to me, is very encouraging. Menucha V'Kedusha is a wonderful sefer from Reb Israel Maponovich, who was a Talmud of Reb Chaim Mevolozhin. בחרות על העובר יש כמה מדרגס. קבולה על האוסיד אינו קיים אחס. מה שכוסף הרמב"ם. יוד עולב ידע תלומוס שלא יושב לחתו עוד. And the most important thing is, you need to try to go deep into your heart and fix your bad temptations, not only the Aveda, but what brought you to this Aveda. What are your shortcomings? You need to work on your midas. You need to work on your Eitzahara. V'chein osise b'yaldusi b'yoyim ha'kippurim. This is an amazing line, 4th line. וכן עשוסי בילדוסי ביום הכיפורים והטעיתי את בוראי בהטעת עצמי. I כאילו was lying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu because I lied to myself. שהייתי סבור שגדר הזה יויל באמס וביום הכיפר הבו חיפשתי באמתחתי ומצוצי הקופה מלא יש רוצים כדי אשתקד. So last year on Kippur I really thought I did Teshuvah. And a year later, I realized I'm standing exactly where I was standing before Yom Kippur last year. וחיפשתי ומצאתי גדר ששיערתי שיועיל בוודאי, וגם הוא לא הועיל. וכך נהגתי כמה שנים בזה אחר זה. Every year, I took upon myself different Kabbalahs, and I really thought, this time it's going to work. And I failed once and again and again. עד שנסבר לי מה שכתבתי בשער התפילה, שיצרו הכנסני בשקר וקשרו למעלה מראשי, ואין לי כי אם לחתור השק ולברוח על רגע, ואין בכוחי לשוב בשלמות. So he gives a moshel, and he said, after many years, I realized that the Yetzirah threw me into a sack, and he tied a knot from the outside, and I'm inside. And there's no way in the world that I can open that knot. Because I'm in the bag, and he tied a knot from the outside. So I'm lost. What could I do? So he writes, the only thing I could do is just cry out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, Rabbeinu Shalom, I can't do this on my own. You know, I was thrown into the bag, and the knot is tied from the outside, and there's no way I can get out of here. It is only you. And I turned to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and I said, you know, please come to my help. You're the only one that could tear open this sack or open it up from the outside. I tried my best year after year, and I got nowhere. And this is written almost 200 years ago by a Talmud of Reb Chaim Mevolozhin. So we need to try to do our best, and turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in sincerity and say, Ribono Shel Olam, look into my heart. I really want to be good. I would like to be a tzaddik like Rebbe Melech Melezhensk or Rabbi Tzele Peterburger. That would also make me happy. But you got to help me because there's no way I could do this on my own. So 100 years ago, the Mashgiach in Yeshiva Saladin, before Rosh Hashanah, gave a shmuz. And he said how hard it is to do Teshuvah, how we need to work on this Charot ala Ovar, Kabbalah ala Osid. And then they told the Chofetz Chaim that what the Mashgiach said, and the Chofetz Chaim wondered, and he said, I don't think it's hard to do Teshuvah at all. What is it all about? Charot ala Ovar, Kabbalah ala Osid, and you're there. Why is it so hard? And then there was a tumult in the yeshiva, and the boys didn't know who's right and who's wrong. What's going on here? The Mashgiach gave a shmuz, and he said how tough it is, how difficult it is. And then the Chofetz Chaim said, it's not hard at all. What is it all about? Charot ala Ovar and Kabbalah ala Osid. So they went to the Naftali Trop, and Naftali says, yeah. But the Charot needs to be a real Charot, and the Kabbalah needs to be a real Kabbalah. So the Gemara says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Moshe Elokechu shoyel me'imach, Kiyem le'yiru oisai, ula avdai. And the Gemara says, Eitzel Moshe milse zutresi. For a Moshe, that was just as easy. What does the Kodesh Baruch Hu ask for? Yira, ahava, avoida. But you got to be a Moshe Rabbeinu. So for the Chofetz Chaim, it was very poshut. What is it all about? Charot ala Ovar, Kabbalah ala Osid. So everybody has his own ladder, his own scale of Bechira. But what is most important is the trajectory, the direction. And we all hope that from one Rosh Hashanah to another, and one Yom Kippur to another, we're going up and not going down. So it takes time. You can't go from 1 to 10 in one leap. But we all need to know, Tachlis or Avoida is, what's your direction? Are you on the right path? Are you going up? Or Yisu Ach Lamala? So yes, it's hard, like the Mashgiach and Radin said. It's easy, like the Chofetz Chaim said. Chofetz Chaim is more encouraging than his Mashgiach was in the yeshiva. And this Vasemis is more encouraging than the Beis HaLevi. But what is important is to be sincere and to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and says, we want to be good. And we wish we would have the power to be so. So please help us along. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps you. Habo letayr mesayin loy. We should all be zoichet to Teshuvah Shalema. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us. And we should be zoichet La'ahava u'liyira, learn a lot of Torah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be Kabbalah Tfilis, and we should all be zeicher together with Klal Yisrael, Ksiv v'chasim etoive b'sifron shel tzadikim gemurim, a good gebenched year. We should have a Shana Toive Mesuka, and this year should be a Shnas Geula v'Yeshua b'mheiro v'yomeinu amen.